Guys, happy Monday. In today's video, I'll be covering the latest updates on Wall Street, Bitcoin. We'll be covering technical analysis of Bitcoin, MicroStrategy, and the Bitcoin miners. In fact, we have a lot to cover, and I'll share with you is now a time to buy, sell, or hold. Today, we had so much news going around, especially last week, the last 2 days of trading, Thursday and Friday, along with today, market opening, that was like the biggest historical stock market drop since 1987. There's so much uncertainty. I mean, several weeks back, we were talking about how it's likely that it'll just be a market correction and it's unlikely for us to enter a recession. However, now things have really changed after Liberation Day with all of these tariff news coming into play, even though tariffs in the long term can really benefit the United States. This is really causing tension, trade wars going on right now. In fact, Trump is getting negotiation deals with so many countries right now. But what really caused a market reaction to stir today? That had to do with China and the United States tension with trade war increasing, in that Trump is increasing the tariffs with an additional 50% based on what China had done with the 34% retaliation tariff. So now the question is, where do we meet in the middle? Where do we draw the line here and have negotiations between both parties? Now, if you're new to this channel, first off, I would really appreciate hitting the like, subscribing, and I would encourage watching through the entire video where I'll be playing a video clip of Michael Saylor. Let's begin, guys. We're looking at Wall Street Journal. One of the good things is that as we look at the future markets here, we're seeing S&P up by about 1.8, 1.5%. In fact, in the Asia markets, we're seeing upward movements in the market for the Asia market, and this is looking pretty good for tomorrow. However, that doesn't mean volatility is going to go away. We will be getting some green days, and the red days will continue until we get more clarity on what this means here. In fact, the market today started running up with speculation in that Trump was going to announce a 90-day easing on the tariffs until negotiations come into play. However, that was rejected. And what happened? The market started dropping again. Bitcoin price started dropping again. However, it started to climb, but this is looking better compared to today, just with markets opening up at like -5% with Dow Jones, S&P, NASDAQ. We're looking green, which is expected tomorrow, but that doesn't mean Wednesday will be the same results. With that, I want to play a video clip of Donald Trump. I mean, in that he will add an additional 50% tariff to China if they don't take back their additional tariff. This is what a true leader looks like, holding the line here, playing 4D chess.
Against my statement, they put a 34% tariff on above what their ridiculous tariffs were already. And I said, if that tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on. So they've gone for years. They've become a rich country because of people, again, that were in the White House that allowed this to happen, against my.
There you heard it from Donald Trump. Let's see what plays out in the coming days and weeks here. Cryptos Are Us posted. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says 70 countries have reached out to President Trump to negotiate new trade deals. In the meantime, China tags President Trump on X, and that's it. You see here, China just commenting to Donald Trump without any information. So this is interesting where we have tensions increasing between China and the United States. There's so much going on right now with Bitcoin, Wall Street, Max 7 stocks have dropped so much. However, whenever these stocks drop, it's time to take advantage. We don't typically get these type of drops so much where we don't take advantage. In the long term course, stocks, Bitcoin will always go up and there will always be drawdowns. The ones who actually win in this market are those who remain patient and take advantage. I've been taking advantage of MicroStrategy, Bitcoin price, just sprinkling in whatever I can possible because I know in a long-term course, I know that these investments will go up. CMC coin market cap, the crypto fear greed index, we're at that extreme fear right now. Yesterday, at its all-time high of 17 extreme fear. What happened during the time of the Trump election? There was extreme greed here. But now I think, where we are with just so much uncertainty, buy when there's blood on Wall Street. Yes, there may be more drawdowns where Bitcoin or even stocks can go down even further. But rather than trying to time the market, dollar cost average down when the prices are at discount prices. That's how you win. We've seen multiple rejections here from like 2021, 2022, 2024 in the Bitcoin bull cycle. And now the prior resistance is now at that support line. Even though we reached that prior all-time high resistance at 109,000. So we're at that retest point here where we may potentially continue going down or go up. In fact, one of the key support lines is somewhere around that 67,000. Why do I bring that up? 67,000 is a key support line. In fact, today when we saw a price of Bitcoin dropping down 75K, I mean, what's next on the lower end threshold? Getting into the 60,000 range. But what's pivotal at the 67,000 range is with MicroStrategy's purchase cost with the total amount of Bitcoin of 528,000. If let's say Bitcoin reaches that 67,000, that's where all of MSTR, investors are hedged against that average cost of Bitcoin. Now, over the long-term course, I do foresee MicroStrategy to be the most dominant, even though average cost is 67,000. They have the biggest hodl, and as Bitcoin goes to a million, MicroStrategy is going to be a multi-trillion dollar, one of the biggest companies in the entire world here. But I think just with this key support from a near-term perspective, hopefully we don't see that 67,000 support line be broken here. That's on the bear case. Now, on a bull case, we may very well see a breakout. Why? Bitcoin does not need the government. The government realizes Bitcoin is the safe haven, the ultimate hedge. All assets in this world, there's inflation, there's regulation, but Bitcoin is the best asset, the world-class asset. I mean, think about it. Bitcoin went to 100,000 per coin. Is Bitcoin going to break 100,000 again? There's no question that, that it is or not. It will get there. Now, there's no question as to whether Bitcoin will or will not break $1 million. Why? Because you can't manufacture more Bitcoin. And this is why Bitcoin price, supply and demand, there's only 5.5% left to mine, which is why Bitcoin price is just going to go up. In fact, the United States, we've heard from Trump that they're planning on buying Bitcoin, about a million Bitcoins under Senator Cynthia Lummis's plan, strategic Bitcoin reserve. Bitcoin Act of 2025. That's going to be huge for the United States. We know the US fiat money is going to go away, going to be replaced by Bitcoin, which is why it's a global race right now towards Bitcoin hedge. Here's a post from Fiat Archive. Bitcoin hash rate has hit 1 zettahash per second for the first time in Bitcoin's 16-year history, over 1,000 exahash. So it continues to climb, exponential increase with the understanding that there's about 5.5% Bitcoins available to mine. So what does this mean? I think now, even though there's X amount of Bitcoins left to mine, the value of Bitcoin price will continue going up, which is why we saw some nice performance in the Bitcoin sector today, especially the miners. I mean, when you look at the overall comparison here, we have 7.9 billion people. We have 21 million Bitcoin. This is true scarcity. Understand it before the majority does. FOMO kicks in when price of Bitcoin goes up. I think now's a great time to buy Bitcoin if you have the propensity to do so. Even if it's a small amount, take advantage because Bitcoin price under 80K, like what Sailor says, is a blessing. We're looking at Bitcoin price where it currently is at the time of this recording at 80,284. Yes, we saw some big time fears going on. Price in the last 24 hours dropping to 74,000. We see the price getting eaten up here, going back up to the 80,000. I think this is all attributed to the Wall Street markets in the Asia markets, opening up more in the green. People are beginning to buy Bitcoin. I think we have exhausted selling of Bitcoin and that we have long investors, bulls, new whales trying to buy up Bitcoin. Everyone understands that Bitcoin is here to stay, and this is nice, upward motion to 80,000 here, but hopefully we continue to see consolidation. Bitcoin price has been hovering in this bull flag for many months now. We may very well see a breakout. However, on the bear side, we can potentially even get, back down in the 70,000. The bear case scenario is even testing 65,000 support, which, a lot of bears are anticipating as well. But I do think where we are right now, we may very well have a breakout Q2, Q3 of this year where, like what Tom Lee says, 150,000 is very possible as well. What does this mean for MicroStrategy? Today we saw MSTR dropping 8%, although last Friday it was up 4% when there was just a big bloodbath here where a lot of people thought that Bitcoin is beginning to decouple from Wall Street. However, Monday that wasn't the case. We saw data points where Bitcoin just took a beating as well. MSTR current price 268. I definitely do think that yes, while we see huge volatility here, we're still consolidating here. And depending on how Bitcoin performs, whether it goes down, whether it tests, the 60,000 range, we may very well start seeing MicroStrategy retest that support of $220. But hopefully, Bitcoin can hold that threshold, that support line of like 82,000, start climbing back up. It all really depends on just how the markets see the uncertainty, and it all dependent on the treasury yield continuing to go down, and as a result, expediting the leverage pull down of the Federal Reserve federal funds rate, having that be reduced down. I think that will definitely help stimulate the economy, and that may have MicroStrategy price start going back up. But I think there's a bull case, there's a bear case, there's lots of volatility going on right now, but we definitely need to see price action get around that 344 hovering. We're looking at the big three Bitcoin miners, Mara, Riot, CleanSpark. I mean, just going back from like early February to now April, Riot down 44%, Mara down 43%, CleanSpark down 32%. How much more can these miners get beat down? There's been just heavy market suppression. But in fact, today we saw the Bitcoin miners in the green. In fact, CleanSpark was in the green. Mara and Riot were just really at that net zero today. But this is looking very good, especially when we see a lot of the stocks, Bitcoin's taking a beating. I think because Bitcoin miners have been beat down so much even before this recent market uncertainty. I think we may very well see some decoupling in the Bitcoin miners in that it's going to start overperforming now. Q1 was such an ugly quarter as well as beginning of Q2, but I think things are going to switch into gears here. And I do think that we may very well see some huge upside running up here that's going to be very unexpected. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what your thoughts are. Are we going to see Bitcoin go back up into that 80, 90,000, reach its prior resistance, or will we continue to see more retracement where Bitcoin price is going to start dropping even below 70,000? Let me know what your thoughts are. What are you doing? Are you buying MicroStrategy, Bitcoin miners, or what's your take on this? Thanks. I'll see you on the next one.